Common sense is free, yet it's the one thing too many people can't afford. The rules that keep us safe aren't complicated, but some people treat them like suggestions until reality proves otherwise.
Blow that my face.
From a man who thought fireworks made a good hat, to a contest that killed someone over a video game console, to a slug dare that destroyed a body from the inside out, these are the most tragically stupid deaths of all time. Number 9. High-rise window taunt. It was a summer afternoon in downtown Toronto, July 9, 1993. A group of law students had come to the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Centre for a tour of one of Bay Street's top firms, Holden Day Wilson. They were there to meet lawyers, see the view, and maybe get a glimpse of what their own future might look like. The mood was light, the kind of day where everyone smiled politely and tried to make a good impression. Among the partners greeting them was 40-something Gary Hoy, a corporate and securities lawyer who'd been with the firm for years. He was respected, outgoing, and known for mentoring young staff. Inside the office, people saw him as the kind of senior lawyer others wanted to work for. Confident, funny, and always looking for ways to put people at ease. That afternoon, he decided to do just that with what he called his party trick. Hoy pointed toward one of the floor-to-ceiling windows lining the outer wall. He told the students the glass was incredibly strong, practically unbreakable. He had shown it off before, and he wanted to prove it again. Taking a few steps back, he threw himself shoulder first into the glass. The window shook but held firm. The sound made everyone jump, then laugh with relief. The glass hadn't broken, just like he promised. For Hoy, that was the point. He'd done it before, bounced off it every time, and it always got the same reaction. But this time, he wasn't finished. He turned, grinned, and ran at it again. The glass didn't shatter. It stayed completely intact. What failed was the frame. The entire sealed window unit tore free from the wall. Still attached to its metal casing, it slid outward, taking Hoy with it. In an instant, the laughter stopped. The students stood frozen as the window disappeared. Moments later, the sound from outside told them what had happened. The frame and glass fell 24 floors to the plaza below, and so did Gary Hoy. When security and paramedics arrived, there was nothing to be done. News of the accident spread quickly. Reporters called engineers, asking how something like this could happen if the glass itself was strong. The answer was straightforward. Windows in high-rise buildings are built to handle wind pressure, rain, and the occasional bump, not the full force of a 160-pound man continuously running into them. The pain might have been strong enough to stop him, but the mounting that held it in place wasn't designed for that kind of impact. The fallout inside Holden Day Wilson was heavy. The firm's management scrambled to control the headlines and calm employees who had witnessed the tragedy. Some workers left early that day and never returned. Over the following years, Holden Day Wilson struggled to recover. Morale sank, partners left, and the event became a dark shadow over what had once been one of Toronto's most respected firms. When the firm finally dissolved in 1996, many insiders quietly admitted that Hoy's death had been one of the first blows that broke the company's spirit. Number 8. The Slug Dare. It was a warm night in Sydney in 2010. 19-year-old Sam Ballard was sitting in a backyard with his friends, drinking red wine and laughing. They were relaxed, joking, enjoying the kind of evening that feels endless when you're young. Then someone noticed a small slug crawling across the patio. Sam was dared to eat it. He grinned, picked it up, and swallowed it. Everyone laughed. It seemed like one of those silly moments that would be forgotten by morning. But it wasn't. Within a few days, Sam felt strange pain shooting through his legs. He thought it might pass, but it didn't. The pain grew worse. He became weak and feverish, and soon his mother, Katie, rushed him to a hospital. Tests came back with a result that sounded like something out of a science journal. Angiostrongylus cantonensis, rat lungworm. Doctors explained how it worked. Rats carry the parasite in their lungs. When they leave droppings, slugs and snails crawl through them and pick up the larvae. If a person accidentally eats an infected slug, snail, or unwashed produce, those larvae can enter the human body. Usually the illness they cause is mild. Sometimes it's barely noticeable. But in rare, terrible cases, the parasite reaches the brain and spinal cord, inflaming both and causing paralysis or death. Sam had fallen into that smallest, worst group. His doctors diagnosed him with eosinophilic meningitis, swelling around the brain and spinal cord caused by the parasite. The infection quickly got out of control. Within days, he slipped into a coma. Machines kept him alive as doctors tried to calm the swelling and fight the infection. He stayed that way for roughly 420 days. When Sam finally woke up, everything had changed. The once athletic teenager who played rugby and rode bikes with friends could no longer move his arms or legs. He couldn't speak clearly. He needed tubes to breathe and eat. The damage was permanent. Sam Ballard was now a quadriplegic. His mother, Katie, never left his side. She described her son as a cheeky, fearless kid, the kind who always went first, never hesitated, and never thought anything bad could happen. Now she spent every day helping doctors turn him, clean his tubes, and monitor machines that beeped through the night. His friends visited, trying to make him laugh, still cracking the same old jokes. Sometimes he smiled, sometimes he just stared, lost in the fog that his illness had left behind. What started as a 5-second dare became years of hospital beds, wheelchairs, rehab sessions, seizures, and sleepless nights. The cost of keeping him alive was enormous. At first, Australia's National Disability Insurance Scheme approved a major funding package so he could receive round-the-clock care. It paid for nurses, equipment, and home renovations. Then suddenly, the funding was cut back. The family struggled to keep things running, to pay helpers, maintain the feeding machines, and move Sam safely in and out of his wheelchair van. When reporters picked up the story and the public reacted, the government restored the full funding. It was a small victory that made life manageable again, even if it didn't change Sam's condition. By early 2018, an Australian current affairs program checked in on Sam again. The crew filmed him at home, showing what daily life looked like. Later that year, his health began to slide. He had repeated infections, and his body was wearing out. Katie said his final words to her were, "I love you." In November 2018, 8 years after that night in the backyard, Sam Ballard died in a Sydney hospital surrounded by family and close friends. Number 7. Firework on the head. It was the 4th of July in Calais, Maine. A few friends had gathered in a small backyard on South Street to celebrate. It was late, about 10 at night, and everyone was relaxed. Drinks were out, laughter came easily, and boxes of consumer fireworks sat nearby. Among them was 22-year-old Devin Staples. He was the funny one of the group, the kind of guy who liked to make people laugh. The night felt normal for a summer holiday, until one bad idea changed everything. A reloadable mortar works like this. You set a sturdy tube on the ground, drop in a shell, light the fuse, and step back. The lift charge sends the shell hundreds of feet into the air before it explodes in color. The key is that the tube never leaves the ground. Devin didn't follow that rule. At some point, maybe as a joke, he picked up the tube and held it against his head. Friends saw it and told him to stop. They thought they'd talked him out of it. A second later, the fuse was lit. The mortar fired at point-blank range. Devin collapsed instantly. There wasn't time for help or a trip to the hospital. The blast was strong enough that neighbors heard it from down the street. When they came outside, they saw flashing lights, police tape, and shocked faces in the yard. What had been a quiet celebration had turned into a scene no one there would ever forget. It was Maine's first fireworks-related death since the state legalized consumer fireworks in 2012. Number 6. Roof-topping fall. On November 8, 2017, roof-topping star Wu Yongning climbed to the roof of the 62-story Huayuanhua Center in Changsha, Hunan. He was 26 years old and already well-known online for his high-rise stunts. That morning, he went up alone, carrying his small tripod and camera. His goal was the move he'd practiced dozens of times before: hang from the ledge, pull himself up a few times, and climb back to safety. No rope, no harness, just muscle and timing. Wu Yongning wasn't some random thrill-seeker. He had once worked as a stuntman and film extra in Hengdian, learning balance and martial arts control on movie sets. Viewers loved watching him move calmly across narrow beams hundreds of feet above the ground. On Weibo, he built an audience of more than 60,000 followers, fans who tuned in to see him balance on antennas and ledges with the city far below. In the months before that climb, his posts came from every corner of China. Bridges in Wuhan, skyscrapers in Nanjing, towers in Chongqing, and chimneys in his home province of Hunan. He uploaded short clips and live streams to build his name. So why that day? According to his girlfriend and later news reports, Wu Yongning was filming for a challenge that promised a 100,000 yuan prize, about $15,000. He needed the money for his mother's medical bills and for the wedding they were planning. The footage from that rooftop is short and brutal. Wu lowers himself over the side, hanging by his hands. He performs a few smooth pull-ups, then reaches his leg up to hook the edge and climb back. For 10 long seconds, he struggles to lift his torso high enough to get one arm over the ledge. He reaches again, misses, and suddenly he's gone, falling out of frame, leaving only the sky in view. There was no safety line, no second angle, no help waiting nearby. That day, November 8th, marked the end of his posts. Fans noticed the silence quickly. A month later, on December 8th, his girlfriend confirmed what many feared. Wu had died in Changsha while filming a stunt. Wu's family took it to court. They sued the live streaming platform Huajiao, arguing that the company earned money from his dangerous performances and failed to protect him. In May 2019, the Beijing Internet Court ruled that Huajiao must pay about $4,200 in compensation to Wu's mother. Number 5. Hold your Wii for a Wii. Hold your Wii for a Wii. The idea was that contestants would drink water, hold their bladders, and whoever lasted longest without using the bathroom would win a Nintendo Wii. Jennifer was from Rancho Cordova, a mother of 3, and she wanted the console for her kids. At the time, the Wii was nearly impossible to find in stores, and the contest promised a way to grab one for free. Inside the station, producers lined up contestants along a table. They handed out small bottles of water and kept the rounds moving. Listeners could hear everything live on the morning rave, the station's loud, joke-filled breakfast show. On air, the hosts played it as a goofy endurance challenge. In the studio, people were drinking water every few minutes. Reports later described the pace as intense, bottle after bottle, without much time in between. Contestants started to look uncomfortable, clutching their stomachs, but the bit rolled on. Jennifer laughed along, taking her turn each round. Several contestants later said she may have drunk close to 2 gallons in just a few hours. That amount, under those conditions, isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. In one segment, a caller phoned in to warn the hosts that the challenge could actually kill someone, saying it was a condition known as water intoxication. Another person inside the studio mentioned the same thing, saying they'd heard about a fraternity hazing death involving too much water. The show didn't stop. The hosts joked about it and kept counting down bottles. As the contest dragged on, Jennifer began saying her head hurt. She told the hosts her belly felt swollen and joked that she looked pregnant. Those were textbook red flag symptoms. Her body was starting to dilute its own sodium. When you drink large amounts of water too quickly, your blood sodium level drops, a condition called hyponatremia. Cells begin to absorb water to balance things out, and the brain starts to swell. The result can be seizures, coma, or death. When the last round ended, Jennifer didn't even win. She placed second and left the station early, saying she didn't feel well. On her drive home, she called work to say she was sick and couldn't come in. A few hours later, her mother found her unresponsive on the bathroom floor of her Rancho Cordova home. The Sacramento County Coroner's report listed the cause of death as acute water intoxication, hyponatremia caused by excessive water consumption during the KD&D contest. She had died only hours after leaving the studio. Months later, the district attorney decided not to file criminal charges, reasoning that Jennifer had joined voluntarily and that the staff hadn't forced her to continue. But that didn't close the door on civil liability. Inside KD&D, the response was swift. Management pulled the morning rave off the air and fired 10 employees, including all 3 on-air hosts. It was damage control, but the public outrage didn't fade. Jennifer's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Entercom, KD&D's parent company, and the station's staff. The lawsuit argued that the contest created a foreseeable risk of serious harm and ignored clear warnings. The civil trial began in Sacramento in 2009. Witness after witness described what had happened inside the studio. A doctor testified that Jennifer's complaints of headache and nausea were early signs of hyponatremia, and that simple, fast medical treatment, an IV with saline, could have saved her life if anyone had recognized the danger. Jurors also heard that staff had been warned mid-show by callers about the risks, yet kept going. In October 2009, the jury delivered its verdict. Entercom was liable. Jennifer's family was awarded $16.5 million in damages. It was one of the largest wrongful death awards ever tied to a broadcast stunt. Number 4. Homemade rocket crash. On February 22, 2020, a small crowd gathered in the Mojave Desert outside Barstow, California. They were there to watch Michael "Mad Mike" Hughes launch himself into the sky in a rocket he had built by hand. He was 64 years old, a limousine driver turned daredevil who had spent years chasing one goal: to prove he could fly a homemade rocket. The machine sat on a tall metal ramp on private land near Highway 247. Cameras from the Science Channel were there, filming for a show called Homemade Astronauts. The plan was to fire the rocket, climb a few thousand feet, release parachutes, and land safely in the desert. Hughes had done it before. Back in March 2018, he launched near Amboy, California, and reached almost 1,900 feet. That rocket used steam power. Just hot water turned into pressure, shooting through a nozzle for thrust. He floated back under parachutes and walked away, sore but alive. This new rocket used the same design, only bigger, and it was built for TV. That Saturday, the weather was clear. Just before 2 p.m., Hughes climbed into the narrow metal capsule. His team did a final check and started counting down. The crowd went quiet. When the valve opened, the rocket blasted off the ramp in a cloud of steam. But something went wrong right at liftoff. Video taken by witnesses shows a white bundle tearing loose from the side of the rocket, his main parachute. Without that chute, there was no backup plan. The rocket kept rising for a few seconds, then began to turn. With no parachutes left to slow it down, it fell fast. Seconds later, it slammed into open desert with a heavy thud that echoed across the flats. At 1:52 p.m., deputies from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department arrived. They found the rocket shattered and confirmed that Hughes had died on impact. After the crash, his friends finished what he started. The Homemade Astronauts series aired later that year and dedicated an episode to him. It showed the long hours he spent testing valves, welding pieces together, and chasing the moment when his creation would finally lift off. Number 3. Stepping into a live car wash. It was late on a Friday night in Escondido, California, April 15, 2022. A quiet car wash sat along East Valley Parkway, its neon lights glowing against the pavement. The place was nearly empty when a 56-year-old man from Las Vegas pulled into one of the self-service bays. His name was Rene Tacte Jaime. He was driving a 2014 Scion XB, visiting family in town, and had decided to give his car a quick rinse before heading home. It was close to 11:45 p.m. He followed the painted arrows into the tunnel, stopping exactly where the signs told him to stop. The setup was simple, an automated self-serve wash where you guide your own car through, watching for red and green lights that tell you when to move. It's the kind of place that runs around the clock without staff hovering nearby. That night, Rene was alone in the bay. Then, something strange happened. For reasons no one can explain, Rene opened his door and stepped out. Police later said they had no idea why. He wasn't far from the car, just a few feet away, when it started to roll forward. The Scion was still in drive. In an instant, it moved far enough to pin him against one of the car wash's steel posts. There was no spray of water, no spinning brushes, no noise from the machines. The wash wasn't even running. It was just a slow roll and a crush that a human body couldn't survive. An alarm inside the bay began to sound. A passing customer nearby heard it and came to check. What they saw was horrifying. A man trapped between his car and the frame of the wash. They called for help immediately. Officers arrived within minutes, pushing and lifting the Scion just enough to pull Rene free. Paramedics rushed him to Palomar Medical Center, but his injuries were too severe. Doctors pronounced him dead not long after he arrived. Detectives couldn't answer the one question everyone had. Why did he get out? There was no note, no sign of distress, and no indication of a medical issue. The video showed him stepping out casually, not stumbling or clutching his chest. Number 2. Riding a grain bin. The day started like any other at the Haasbach grain facility in Mount Carroll, Illinois. It was July 28, 2010. Inside bin 9, wet corn had stopped moving. The grain was heavy and damp, stuck together in thick clumps instead of sliding down to the conveyor below. Workers called it bridging. To the crew that morning, it looked like a routine job, just another cleanup to get the grain flowing again. But that slow, sticky pile would become a death trap. Before 10 a.m., 3 workers were sent up to fix it. Their names were Wyatt Whitebread, 14 years old, Alex Packus, 19, and Will Piper, 20. One of them was a minor under federal law, and none of them had the right safety gear. There were no harnesses, no lifelines, and no lockout tag on the machinery below. The boys thought the task was simple. Climb in, break up the crusted corn, and get the bin cleared. Grain inside a bin can look solid, but it's not. When the conveyor or auger turns on, the whole mass starts to behave like quicksand. If it begins to flow while someone's standing inside, it pulls them under in seconds. Even a surface that looks firm can be hiding a hollow space underneath. Step on it, and it collapses. That's why federal safety rules strictly forbid entering a bin to loosen clumps while the equipment is running. The three young men climbed to the roof, opened the hatch, and stepped inside. At some point, someone turned on the conveyor. The grain began to shift beneath their boots. Then, without warning, the surface gave way. One of them sank to his knees, then to his waist. The others tried to grab him, but the corn was already moving. It was like the ground had turned liquid. Alex Packus stayed beside Will Piper, trying to hold him up. He told Will to stay calm and keep breathing. Outside, co-workers realized what was happening and scrambled to help. They hit the emergency stop and grabbed tools, trying to cut holes in the curved steel walls to let the corn spill out faster. Inside the bin, 14-year-old Wyatt Whitebread disappeared first, swallowed completely. Packus and Piper were trapped chest deep, still struggling to stay above the surface. Firefighters and rescue crews arrived with saws and vacuum hoses. They began cutting into the bin, trying to drain the grain before it buried both men. The rescuers lowered a rescue tube, a metal cylinder meant to shield a trapped person while they dig the grain away, but time was running out. Packus kept his hands on Piper's shoulders, forcing him upward, telling him not to give up. When they finally pulled Piper free, he was the only one still breathing. Alex Packus had suffocated trying to save him. OSHA cited Haasbach for 25 violations and proposed fines totaling $555,000, plus more than $68,000 in child labor penalties. The company eventually settled with the Labor Department, and the penalties were reduced. Number 1. Running up the down escalator. Just after midnight on a cold Tuesday, a man walked into the new Carrollton Amtrak station in Prince George's County, Maryland. The place was nearly empty. The platforms were quiet, the lights buzzing overhead, and an escalator hummed in the distance. Cameras inside the station later caught him walking alone toward it. He didn't run. He didn't seem drunk or in a hurry. He simply stepped onto the wrong one, the down escalator, and started climbing up against the moving steps. He was alone. No one else was around to stop him or call out. The video shows him moving steadily, step by step, working hard to climb as the escalator pulled against him. It wasn't a prank or a challenge for social media. It was just a man, late at night, walking the wrong way on a moving machine. For almost half a minute, he kept climbing. Then, as he neared the top landing, things changed fast. That's the point where the moving steps flatten out and slide beneath the metal combs, the teeth that meet the floor. He was almost there when he lost his balance. His foot slipped and he fell backward. The fall was fast. He tumbled down the moving stairs, bouncing off the metal steps before hitting the base of the escalator. The sound of the impact carried through the empty station, but there was no one there to hear it. The escalator kept moving, dragging his body down as it turned. By the time early commuters arrived, he was lying at the bottom. He had struck his head hard, and he was already gone. At first, some news reports said it was a medical emergency, maybe a heart attack or collapse. But police and Amtrak officials later corrected that. After watching the station's security footage, they confirmed what really happened. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.